The forest was the darkest shade of midnight when Eric felt his body weakening again. The hunger wasn't the usual burn he'd lived with for centuries. This was different, deeper, colder, like something inside him was turning to stone. His breath trembled, his hands shook, even his vision blurred at the edges. He had battled armies, outlived empires, and walked through centuries untouched by disease, until now. The elders had a name for it: Crimson Wither. A slow, crawling death for vampires, rare, unforgiving, fatal. And there was only one cure: a human girl, a virgin untouched by romantic or physical closeness, innocent in soul, pure in intention, and marked from birth with one sign: the heart mole, a birthmark shaped like a teardrop on the left side of her chest. Finding such a girl in the sprawling world should have been impossible, but fate had always been cruelly exact with him. Eric tightened his cloak around his shoulders as he approached Valewood Village, a hidden settlement at the edge of shadowed mountains. A dying vampire did not usually walk among mortals, but the elders had whispered that this land had once been blessed or cursed by women born with rare magical marks. He had no choice. He could feel time sinking claws into him. The moment he stepped into the village, the air shifted. Sweet, warm, strangely alive. It wasn't blood he smelled. He knew the scent of blood better than his own name. No, this was something else, something that gripped him by the throat and pulled. A girl. Not just any girl. An energy unlike anything he'd felt in 300 years suddenly brushed against his senses. He froze. A heartbeat. Soft, delicate, trembling, echoed in his vampiric hearing. He turned sharply toward the fields stretching behind the village, and there, half hidden in the sunlight, bent over baskets of freshly harvested crops, was her. A girl young and quiet, with hair falling down her back like a river of dark silk. Her dress was simple, her hands small and gentle. She moved with the innocence of someone untouched by the world, untouched by men. And as the wind shifted, her scent reached him again. Wild honey, morning dew, and something entirely her own. His mind went blank. His heart, if he still had one, lurched. Eric took one step, then another, unable to stop himself. But before he could speak, the girl looked up. Her eyes widened the instant she saw a male figure, tall, severe, impossibly pale, and fear shot across her face. Pure, instinctive fear. She dropped the basket and stepped back. A man," she whispered, barely audible. Then she ran. Not out of rudeness, not out of insult, but out of terror so raw that it twisted something inside him. Eric felt the pull again, stronger than before, a magnetic force, a call written into his very bones. His disease pulsed sharply inside his chest, reminding him that she was important, dangerously important. And before he even realized it, he followed her. silently, swiftly, almost unwillingly. Through the narrow dirt paths, past the wooden fences, all the way to the worn but warm-looking cottage at the edge of the village. She slipped inside and closed the door quickly, breathing hard. Eric stopped only a few steps away. What was this feeling? He had fed from thousands, seen beauty in countless forms, but this girl, this frightened, innocent creature, carried something that called to him like a forgotten destiny. He inhaled deeply. That scent again. His body reacted violently, craving what it shouldn't crave. Not blood, not flesh, something deeper, something woven into her spirit. He steadied himself, gripping the wooden railing beside her home. He needed answers. If she was the girl the elders spoke of, if she had the heart mark, she was not only his cure, she was the key to his survival. But he couldn't frighten her more. For the first time in centuries, Eric hesitated. Night approached slowly, wrapping the sky in indigo. The girl did not leave her house again. He stood, silent and hidden, watching the windows glow softly from within, listening to the gentle rhythm of her heartbeat, feeling it echo against the disease rotting inside him. "Amy," he whispered when he overheard her mother call her name from outside earlier. It fit her, soft, delicate, full of life. But the moment her parents left the cottage for evening prayers, Eric knew he would need to confront her, not with force, not with fear, but with truth. If she was the destined one, he needed to know. He stepped forward, lifted a hand, and knocked once. Inside, her breath hitched sharply. "Amy," he said softly through the door, "I mean you no harm." Silence. "I only want to speak." More silence, then hurried footsteps, but instead of opening the door, she locked it. Eric closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Her fear felt like a knife twisting under his ribs. He shouldn't care. She was a cure, nothing more, a remedy to his dying body, a prophecy wrapped in human skin. Yet, why did her trembling heartbeat disturb him so much? Why did he feel protective, not predatory? Why did her name echo inside him long after she fled? He clenched his jaw. If she was truly the foretold one, then approaching her gently wouldn't be enough. No, he needed to know the truth. He needed to know tonight, because his body was weakening. His veins were freezing. His time was running out. And Amy might be the only thing standing between him and the endless dark. The moon was only a thin shard in the sky. But for Eric, the night was bright enough. Vampiric sight needed no lanterns, no torches, no blessing of light. Darkness had always been his ally, and tonight it guided him back to Amy. He stood outside her cottage again, cloaked in shadow. Inside, he could hear everything: the rustle of her thin blanket, the soft tremor in her breath as she turned in her sleep, the flutter of her heartbeat, still nervous, still unsure. He felt it like a warm pulse against his frozen veins. Something inside him weakened. Something else sharpened. If she truly possessed the heart mole, if fate had tied his life to hers, he needed confirmation. Not to violate her privacy, never to harm her, only to know the truth before his disease advanced. He placed his hand on the wooden door. He whispered a single word in the ancient tongue. The lock sighed open. Inside, her room was dim, lit only by the pale silver glow of moonlight slipping through the window. The walls were simple, decorated with small woven hangings, a shelf of clay pots, a set of shoes neatly aligned, a small vase with dried flowers by her bed. Her world was small, pure, uncomplicated, and she was sleeping in the center of it all, curled slightly, her hair scattered across the pillow like midnight silk. Her face glowed softly in the moonlight, innocent, peaceful, unaware of the pull she had on him. Eric stepped closer, his breath tightening. His disease throbbed under his ribs, reminding him why he'd come. The cure required certainty. Yet every step he took toward her felt like trespassing into something sacred. "Amy," he whispered, not to wake her, but because the name clung to his thoughts. Her scent wrapped around him again, soft, warm, delicate. He swallowed hard. He needed to see the mark, not to touch her, never to harm her, only to see. He reached out slowly, his fingers trembling slightly, not from desire, but from sickness, and he gently lifted the edge of the blanket, careful not to come near her skin. But just as he leaned forward, her eyelashes fluttered. Her eyes opened. Amy's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't fully awake, not yet, but she knew something was wrong. Someone was near. Her gaze darted around the room until it landed on him. A man. Tall. Shadowed. Standing by her bed. Her lips parted, a scream gathering, but Eric moved quickly, placing a gentle hand over her mouth to stop the sound before it escaped. "Shh," he whispered urgently, not unkindly. "Please, I am not here to harm you." But she was terrified. Her whole body was trembling beneath the blanket. Her eyes were wide, glistening with fear. Tears began to spill, silently slipping down her cheeks. Eric felt something tighten painfully inside him. Her fear was worse than any wound he had ever suffered. "Amy," he whispered, his voice softening, "please don't be afraid." She tried to move away from him, but the bed was small and she had nowhere to go. Her breaths came fast, shallow, panicked. "I won't hurt you," he said again. "I only need to speak, to explain." But she shook her head rapidly, tears falling faster. So he slowly removed his hand from her mouth. She didn't scream. She only whispered, voice breaking, "Why are you here? What do you want from me?" Her fragility struck him more deeply than any prophecy. Eric stepped back, giving her space, lowering himself so he would not stand towering above her. "I am dying," he said simply. Amy blinked, confused. He continued, his voice quiet but steady. "I am not what you think I am. I am not human, and I am afflicted with a curse, a disease that is killing me slowly."
He placed a hand over his chest. "I don't have much time." Her fear shifted slightly into bewilderment. He took a breath. "There is a cure, a rare one, a girl of pure heart, untouched by any man, innocent in body and in soul, and marked, born with a mole in the shape of a teardrop near her heart." Amy's breath stilled. Eric's eyes locked onto hers. He admitted, surprising even himself, "I came here hoping you were not that girl, but when I saw you, I knew fate had brought me here." Her throat tightened. "Why me?" "Because you may possess what can cure me, and because I feel something I have never felt before." Her heartbeat trembled. Her tears slowed. "Please," she said shakily, "you need to leave. I cannot talk like this. Not like this. If you want anything, speak to my parents." He lowered his head. She was right. He had entered her home, her room, her private world. Even with good intentions, even with death hunting his veins, he had frightened her. He stood. "I didn't come to frighten you," he said quietly, "and I will not insult your dignity again." He stepped backward toward the window. "I will speak to your parents in the morning, if you allow it." Amy nodded, tiny and trembling beneath her blanket. Eric looked at her one last time. Her tear-streaked face, her frightened eyes, her innocence glowing like fragile starlight. He whispered, "I will wait for your permission." And then, with one sweep of his cloak, he disappeared into the night, leaving Amy awake in the quiet dark, heart racing, breath shaken, and unable to forget the vampire who spoke her name like a vow.
Amy did not sleep the rest of the night. She stayed curled beneath her blanket, clutching the fabric to her chest, staring at the window where the stranger—no, not a stranger, a vampire—had vanished. Her body still trembled, not from cold, but from the memory of his presence. The moonlight still lingered on the floor. Her heartbeat still echoed too loudly inside her ribs. Who was he? Why her? Why did his voice sound so desperate and strangely gentle? When morning finally painted the sky pink, she pulled her shawl around her shoulders and stepped quietly into the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she prepared tea, hoping the steam might steady her. But the moment her parents returned from their early errands, she froze. Her mother, Leora, noticed instantly. "Amy, dear, you look pale. Are you ill?" Her father, Barnan, frowned with concern. "You didn't sleep." Amy opened her mouth, then closed it. How could she possibly explain? How could she say, "A man was in my room last night," without terrifying them, or worse, making them think she was imagining things? I need to tell you something," Amy whispered. Before she could speak, a knock echoed at the door. A gentle knock, soft, measured. Her breath caught. Her parents exchanged a quick look and moved to open it. Amy stiffened, dread climbing her spine. And there he stood, the man from the night, Eric. Tall, composed, elegant even in the sunlight. His eyes, dark, ancient, unreadable, softened slightly the moment they settled on Amy. Her mother drew back in surprise. Her father stepped protectively in front of her. Eric bowed his head with old-world grace. "My name is Eric Ravenshaw," he said calmly.
I apologize for disturbing your morning, but I come with sincerity and urgency." Amy swallowed hard. Her parents hesitated. Then her father asked tightly, "What business do you have with my daughter?" Eric's voice was smooth, steady, yet Amy could feel the weight beneath it. "There is a matter of fate, a prophecy, and a disease threatening my life. Your daughter may hold the cure." Amy's mother gasped softly. Barnon's brows furrowed deeply. Amy's heart pounded. Eric continued, choosing his words carefully, respectfully. "I am ill with a rare curse that affects my kind. The cure is tied to a human girl, pure, untouched by any romantic involvement, and born with a mark near her heart. I came to this village searching for such a girl." Her father's expression hardened. "And you think that girl is our daughter?" Eric turned his gaze briefly to Amy, gentle, not demanding, before replying, "Yes, I sensed it the moment I saw her." Amy looked away, twisting her fingers together under the table. Her father stepped forward. "Even if this were true, what do you intend to do with her?" Eric straightened, shoulders tense, almost vulnerable. "I intend to marry her." Amy's breath caught. Her parents froze. Eric continued softly. "Not to claim her, not to bind her in fear, but to honor her. And because the cure must be tied to a permanent bond, if she agrees, and if you consent, I vow to protect her with my life." Silence thickened the air. Amy stared at him, at the steadiness of his expression, the tension in his jaw, the faint exhaustion under his eyes. He was sick. She could see it now. Even the air around him felt thin, strained. Her mother finally spoke, voice trembling. "You claim to be not human?" "Yes." He didn't hide. He didn't lie. He didn't soften the truth. Barnon exhaled shakily. "Let us speak outside." He gestured sharply to Amy. "You stay here." But Amy hesitated. Eric's gaze met hers, soft, steady, apologetic. Her breath caught again, this time for a different reason. There was no threat in his eyes, only ancient pain, only desperation carefully hidden beneath noble composure. And something else. Something the night before had made her too frightened to notice. A strange, unexplainable pull. Hours passed. Amy stayed inside while her parents spoke with Eric beneath the old walnut tree outside their cottage. She watched through the tiny window, saw her father's stern expressions, her mother's worried face, Eric's calm posture, though his shoulders seemed slightly weakened, as if standing too long strained him. Her father paced, her mother clasped and unclasped her hands. Eric stood still, patient, respectful. Every so often, his gaze drifted toward the window where he knew Amy was watching. And when their eyes met, even across distance, Amy felt a strange shift in her chest. Not fear, not exactly. Something quieter, something unnamed. By late afternoon, her parents returned inside. "Amy." His voice was firm, but gentler than she expected. "He wishes to speak to you alone." Her heart thudded. She nodded slowly. Eric stood outside the door, waiting, not stepping in until her father allowed him. He bowed his head slightly. "Amy." He spoke her name like it was something precious. She lowered her gaze, cheeks warming. "Yes?" He kept a respectful distance, his voice soft. I will not ask to see anything that belongs to your privacy. You don't need to reveal any mark to me. All I ask is your word." Amy's breath trembled. Eric continued, "Do you possess the birthmark the prophecy describes?" Amy hesitated. Then quietly, she whispered, "Yes." He closed his eyes as if the air had finally returned to his lungs. She added quickly, "But I won't show it, not before marriage. It's not right." He opened his eyes again, and there was something new in them. Respect, relief, almost like admiration. "I would never ask that of you. Your dignity is yours, always." Amy felt her pulse flutter. He stepped back. His voice grew softer, almost fragile. "Amy, I know this is sudden. I know this future is one you never imagined. But my life, truly, rests in your hands. And if you give me this chance, if you agree to this marriage, I swear I will do everything in my power to honor you, to protect you, to never bring you fear again." Amy swallowed hard. Her parents watched from behind, anxious but silent. Her fingers trembled at her sides. She didn't love him. Not yet. She didn't fully trust him. Not yet. But in his eyes she saw sincerity. A man who had lived too long alone. A creature carrying centuries of silence. A dying soul who looked at her as if she were a dawn she never expected to see. She took a breath and whispered the words that changed both their destinies. "I agree." Eric's expression didn't break, but something in his eyes, deep, ancient, dark, glowed like embers awakening for the first time in centuries. He bowed his head. "Thank you, Amy." And in that moment, the fate of a vampire and a village girl wove together like threads of shadow and sunlight.
The days that followed felt unreal to Amy. Her small village whispered in every corner. Doors opened when she walked past. Women leaned close to each other, murmuring with wide eyes. Men nodded respectfully, though with thinly veiled confusion. A mysterious, noble stranger arriving out of nowhere, asking to marry an innocent village girl, promising protection and prosperity. Of course, the village talked. But no one knew the truth, that the man was not a man at all. Only Amy and her parents carried that heavy secret. Eric was a vampire, and he was dying. The wedding was arranged quickly. Eric insisted on paying for everything: garlands, fresh fabrics, gold thread embroidery for her veil, and enough gifts for her parents to last a lifetime. But he never stepped into her home uninvited again. Every time he visited, he waited outside until her father gestured him in. He always kept a gentle distance from Amy. He spoke to her parents with polite humility, answering their questions honestly, explaining everything he could without frightening them further. And always, when his eyes drifted to Amy, his voice softened. The night before the wedding, Amy sat in her room braiding her hair with trembling fingers. She could hear the faint hum of village celebrations outside, women laughing, lanterns crackling, children running with flower petals in their hands. But her own heart was a storm. She stood by her window, staring at the sky, and then she felt it. The air shifted. A presence approached gently. She turned and saw Eric standing beneath the walnut tree, his cloak brushing the grass. He didn't try to enter, didn't knock. He only lifted his gaze toward her window. Their eyes met. Amy froze, breath catching. Eric gave a slight nod, a question silently asked, "May I speak to you?" She hesitated.
then nodded once. He didn't climb, didn't vanish into mist, didn't use any supernatural means to appear before her. Instead, he walked to the door like any ordinary man, knocked softly, and waited until her father allowed him to enter. It was the first time Amy realized how careful he was being, how deliberate every action was, as if he were trying to rebuild the trust he had broken that first night. He stood near the door, keeping a respectful distance. "Amy," he said softly. She bowed her head slightly. "Yes." He studied her face, his voice warm but edged with something like sorrow. "I want to make sure," he said, "that tomorrow you marry me by your choice, not out of pressure, not fear, not obligation." Amy blinked, startled. He continued, "If you say the word, I will leave this village tonight. I will not bind you to a dying man's fate." Her lips parted. "Leave? Just like that?" Something tightened sharply in her chest, a sensation she didn't understand. "You would go?" she whispered. "If you wished it." Amy looked at him, really looked at him. He stood tall, but she could see the exhaustion beneath his eyes, the faint shakiness of his breath. The disease was worsening. He was losing strength even though he tried to hide it. Yet he offered her a way out. And in that moment, she understood something. Eric did not want her as a tool. He wanted her choice. She took a small step forward. "I will marry you," she said quietly. "I already agreed." Eric exhaled, a fragile breath of something close to relief. His eyes glimmered faintly, not for hunger or desperation, but for gratitude so deep that it made Amy's skin warm. "Thank you," he whispered. And then, without touching her, without crossing the distance between them, he bowed and left. Amy closed the door afterward, leaning against it, heart pounding in ways she no longer defined. The day of the wedding. The sun rose bright, as if the sky itself wanted to bless the union. The village gathered near the small clearing where weddings were held. Garlands of marigold hung from wooden arches. Women sang softly, their voices drifting through the warm breeze. Amy stepped out of her home in a pale cream dress embroidered with gold thread. A veil covered her face. Her hands trembled in her lap. But she felt strangely calm, as if the path before her, though unexpected, was one she was meant to walk. Her parents held her hands as they walked her to the clearing. And there he stood, Eric, dressed in deep midnight attire, elegant yet simple. His pale skin glowed softly in the afternoon light. His hair framed his face gently, and his eyes, fixed on her the moment she appeared, held something intense yet tender, not possessive, not dominating, but reverent, like she was a miracle he didn't deserve to witness. As she approached, he bowed his head deeply, a gesture of profound respect. The ceremony was simple, filled with ancient local traditions. Vows were exchanged under the old walnut tree. Garlands were placed. Blessings were given. Eric kept his voice steady, though Amy heard the faint strain beneath it, as if even speaking required effort. The disease was eating him from the inside, she realized. But when Amy finally lifted her gaze to meet his, he smiled, softly, gratefully, as though that single moment healed more than any cure ever could. When the priest finally declared them husband and wife, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, as if nature itself accepted their bond. Eric extended his hand. Amy hesitated, then placed her small hand into his. His fingers curled around hers with a tenderness that surprised her, not gripping, not pulling, simply holding. Their first touch filled the space between them with quiet electricity. A promise, a vow, a beginning. The village cheered softly. Amy looked at Eric, her husband now, and something shifted deep within her heart, something warm and fragile. Eric lifted her hand and pressed it to his chest, right above the place where his heart once beat. His voice was barely a whisper. "You have saved my life already, and I will spend the rest of mine honoring that gift." Amy's breath trembled, but she did not pull her hand away.
The days after the wedding were a strange blend of serenity and tension for Amy. Her new life with Eric was like stepping into a world she had never imagined, a world of shadows and moonlight, where even the air seemed alive with his presence. He did not demand her attention, he did not force closeness, but every time he was near, it was impossible to ignore the pull that wrapped around her heart, a subtle but undeniable gravity. Eric, meanwhile, was slowly regaining strength. His disease, tied to the prophecy and to Amy, began to recede, not fully cured yet, but noticeably weaker. He felt vitality returning to his veins, but with it came a new kind of restlessness, one he could no longer ignore. Amy noticed the change immediately. First morning together. It was their first morning waking in the same home, the sun spilling golden light through the small windows of their bedroom. Amy sat up, careful not to disturb him. His breathing was steady, though his pale skin was still lighter than human. Eric, however, was already awake, sitting by the window, looking out at the village. He turned slightly when he heard her stirring. His expression softened, a faint smile curving his lips, a rare sight after centuries of stoicism. "Good morning," he said quietly. Amy's lips parted. "Good morning." He stood, moving toward her slowly, giving her space. Even after marriage, he never approached without warning. "Sleep well?" he asked. Amy nodded, cheeks warming. "Yes, I think." Eric studied her for a moment. His eyes, so dark and ancient, held something softer now. Care, admiration, a hint of awe. "You look well." Amy swallowed. "I thank you." His smile deepened. "I have never known peace like this, and it is because of you." Her heart fluttered. The slow building of intimacy. Over the next few weeks, Eric and Amy settled into a delicate rhythm. Mornings were quiet. He would attend to his health, she to the small tasks of their home. Afternoons were spent in shadowed walks through the village or along the river, where Eric moved silently, almost floating. Nights were the hardest. Amy slept fitfully, feeling the weight of his presence nearby, as if it pressed against her chest. Eric, meanwhile, could not resist watching her in quiet moments, how she folded her hands in thought, how her hair fell across her shoulders, how even her breaths seemed to hold a rhythm that pulled him further from exhaustion and closer to life itself. He did not touch her inappropriately, he did not demand her. Yet every glance, every careful gesture spoke of centuries of desire restrained by respect and honor. Amy, for her part, felt a strange warmth growing toward him. Curiosity, fear, and admiration mingled together. She had agreed to marry him for her parents' sake, and because she could see he meant no harm, but even she could not deny that her heart responded in ways she did not understand. The cure deepens.
Eric's strength returned gradually. Each day he felt the disease retreating like a shadow from a candle. But with every improvement, Amy noticed subtle changes in him. He was more patient, yes, but also more intense. His gaze lingered longer. His presence filled every corner of the room without a word. She would sometimes catch him watching her as she prepared meals or mended clothes, or even when she sat quietly reading by the fire. Amy felt exposed in a way, but never threatened. Every glance, every silent observation carried admiration, fascination, and an intensity that both frightened and intrigued her. And slowly, she began to feel something stir inside herself, something she could not name. A glimpse of vulnerability. One evening, as moonlight flooded their bedroom, Eric sat by the window, hunched slightly. Amy approached quietly, hesitant. "You look tired," she whispered. Eric's eyes met hers, soft and dark. "I am recovering, slowly," he admitted. "But every moment without your presence feels longer than any night I have survived in centuries." Amy froze, unsure how to respond. Eric continued, voice low. "I have seen lifetimes. I have walked through shadows. And yet, being here, with you, it feels like I am finally alive." Her heart raced. She took a careful step closer. You mean that?" she asked. He nodded, gently, almost painfully. "Every word. And yet I will never rush you. I will never demand more than you are willing to give. That is the only way I can honor you." Her chest tightened. Something inside her shifted. The fear that dominated her thoughts now softened into a growing warmth, a strange trust, a recognition that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to care for him. The first night of shared space. That night, Eric and Amy shared a bedroom for the first time, not in passion, but in presence. They did not sleep together at first, not physically, but the air between them hummed with anticipation. Amy lay beneath her blanket, while Eric sat by the window, reading silently in the moonlight. Occasionally their eyes would meet across the room, and neither would look away immediately. There was understanding in their silence, intimacy in their restraint, and connection in the quiet that words could never capture. And slowly, inevitably, crept upon them both a deep, undeniable, unspoken attraction, tempered by respect, longing, and the fragile beginnings of love.
The weeks turned into months. Eric's disease, the crimson wither, receded steadily. Each day he walked more freely, his strength returning like sunlight creeping through a forest canopy. The hollow weakness that had haunted him for centuries faded, leaving behind only a vibrant energy that pulsed in rhythm with Amy's presence. Yet even though the sickness had left him, the hunger he once mistook for need, desire, remained. But it was no longer tied to survival. It was tied to her, Amy. Her presence had become essential to him in ways that went far beyond the cure. He noticed the small things, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the curve of her smile when she spoke softly,
the way her hands moved as she worked in the house or garden. And Amy, she noticed him too. The awakening of mutual love. At first, Amy had felt only respect, fear, and a strange curiosity about Eric. She had agreed to marry him out of duty and because she could see the truth of his illness. But the months together, living under one roof, sharing moments both quiet and delicate, began to change her. She realized, slowly and painfully, that she looked forward to his presence, that she thought of him when he was away, that the rhythm of her days, once small and contained, was now inextricably tied to his. She caught herself smiling when he watched her from across the room. She felt a flutter in her chest when he brushed a hand past hers, even casually. She wondered at the warmth that surged through her at his simple words, soft and careful, filled with centuries of restrained longing. And for the first time, she admitted it to herself. She had begun to love him. Eric, for his part, had long known he loved her, but now, fully healed, free from the disease that had made his life fragile, he could act on it with confidence, tempered by tenderness. He approached her one evening as she tended the small hearth in their home. "Amy," he whispered softly, "I am no longer dying. The sickness is gone." She looked up, eyes wide. Relief and a strange sadness mingled there. "But what does that mean for us?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Eric stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "It means I am free, free to love you, to care for you, to live fully, and to share every moment with you, if you will allow it." Amy's heart thudded. She felt the warmth of the words settle over her like a blanket. I want that," she admitted, softly, almost trembling. Eric's smile was quiet but full of light. A rare, gentle warmth that reached centuries deep. "Then we shall live it," he said, voice low. "Together." Days of tenderness and connection. Life settled into a pattern both delicate and intimate. Eric and Amy shared quiet walks in the woods, evenings by the hearth, mornings sipping tea as the sun spilled across the floorboards. He never overstepped boundaries. He never demanded more than her comfort allowed. Yet each day, each glance, each touch of the hand or brush of hair built a connection deeper than anything Amy had known. And Amy, she noticed him too. The revelation of life. It happened one morning when Amy noticed a strange change in herself. She awoke with a strange lightness in her chest, a sense of fullness that had nothing to do with the air or sunlight. Something was different, something new. Weeks later, she confirmed the truth. She was carrying their child. The news filled Eric with a joy so intense it surprised even him. He moved silently through the house, finding Amy in the garden where she had gone to gather herbs. "My heart," he whispered, taking her hand gently in his, "we are to have a child." Amy's eyes widened, a mix of awe, happiness, and a strange nervousness washing over her. Eric's grip tightened, not in control, but in warmth and protection. "Our child," he said softly, "alive because of you, because of us, and because you chose to love me." Tears pricked Amy's eyes. She had never imagined this life, not in a million years. Yet now, in his presence, holding his hand, she understood something profound. This was where she belonged. She nodded, her voice a whisper. Yes, our child. Eric held her close, not pressing her, not claiming her, simply holding her in the quiet of the garden, letting the moments stretch into eternity. And for the first time in centuries, he allowed himself to feel entirely alive.